Announcer, Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil refineries are becoming increasingly systematic. In the past 2 weeks alone, 4 major plants have already been destroyed, including one in Saratov. These are not just explosions and fires, but also serious economic consequences for the Kremlin, from reduced exports of petroleum products and growing fuel shortages to the risk of a collapse of Russia's entire oil refining industry. Our correspondent, Yulia Chikichina, has looked into the situation in more detail.
Yulia Chikichina. In just the past 2 weeks, Ukraine's defense forces have struck 4 major Russian oil refineries. The most recent fire broke out in Saratov. Experts say that systematic strikes on enemy refineries could cause significant damage to Russia's economy.
Kirill Nikitin. As for the strikes on Russia's oil refining industry in general, it is believed that the critical threshold is 15%. But more and more analytical global publications, such as Reuters and Bloomberg, are already citing figures of 17 and even 20% of damaged capacity.
Chikichina. The deputy head of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence claims that Russia will have to reduce its export of petroleum products.
Yedyny. The Russian Federation will have to either halt oil production and mothball its wells, which is very expensive and sometimes even impossible, or supply the market with crude unrefined oil, which firstly is cheaper than petroleum products.
Chikichina. Yedyny adds that the enemy has already suffered enormous losses from Ukrainian strikes.
Yedyny, this particular situation may and absolutely will continue to worsen in the near future, and the subsequent loss of revenue from the critically important oil and gas sector, or even the oil refining sector, will simply not allow them to have the financial capability to continue this war effort.
Chikichina. At the same time, economist Ole Ustenko notes that Russian oil producers are no longer willing to invest in this previously profitable business.
Ole Ustenko and oil refiners and producers of petroleum products in the Russian Federation are also losing the desire to invest when there is a high risk that these investments will be destroyed by the Ukrainian military. It works, well, it really works.
Chikichina. And Russian propagandists are watching every Ukrainian strike. They respond accordingly.
Propagandists time and again attacks on Engels continue. Who is to blame that it got through? Who should be held responsible for this?
Chikichina. More and more videos are spreading online showing lines at gas stations in various Russian regions. As a result of the strikes on oil refineries, the amount of gasoline produced decreases, leading to a fuel shortage and accordingly rising prices.
Ustenko. When the price of petroleum products rises on the domestic market, of course, transportation costs also increase. The increase in transportation costs leads to higher production costs, raising the cost of any product in Russia where the transportation cost component is significant. This in turn drives up the overall price level and consequently increases the inflation rate in the country.
The more strikes we carry out and the more Russian oil refineries we put out of commission, the less supply there will be on the market, and the higher the price of fuel will become. In some places, prices will simply rise and increase, while in others there will be a shortage of this fuel.
Chikichina. Experts are convinced that the consequences of further systematic strikes by Ukraine could be catastrophic for the Russian oil refining industry.
As of today, Surgutneftgaz is already experiencing problems and is close to collapse. I genuinely believe that many other oil producers and certainly the large-scale oil refiners could also, given the considerable frequency of our ongoing strikes, find themselves approaching a state of potential financial collapse in the very near future as well. And this would mean the collapse of the oil and gas, and oil refining industry.
Chikichina. Right now it's difficult to calculate the losses to the Russian budget, and technologically, restoring an oil refinery is a complex process. The Russians spend anywhere from 1 to 3 months on this. Yulia Chikichina, Pavlo Bondarenko, Rada TV channel, for the summary program Yedyny Novyny.
And while the American president shifts responsibility for sanctions onto Europe, Ukraine is methodically depleting the oil resources of the so-called gas station countries. Last night, drone forces struck one of Russia's largest oil refineries. It's located here in the Leningrad region, that is 800 kilometers from Ukraine's state border. This oil refinery is the main supplier of fuel not only for the residents of St. Petersburg and the region, but also for the neighboring Novgorod and Pskov regions. The local governor stated that 3 drones were shot down. However, the high-precision debris caused a fire, which was quickly extinguished. Whether the locals believe the words of the Russian official is unknown, because as you can see in these shots, the blaze was intense. The pillar of fire could be seen from several kilometers away. The capable drones also reached Ufa, and that's 1,400 kilometers away. And this facility, all the way near the Ural Mountains, was considered completely safe. And here the important question isn't the mocking one to the Kremlin, so where is your air defense, but rather a question in response to the Russians' hysterical outcries. What on earth is happening? It's easy to support a war when you're not the one being killed. It's a completely different story when it comes back to your own home. Well, the drones easily struck the local Bashneft plant and left a city of 1 million people without industrial water. But the most notable success of the defense forces this week was the key export hub for Russia on the Baltic Sea, the port of Primorsk. It's essentially home to Russia's shadow fleet. It was thanks to this port that Russia so successfully circumvented international sanctions. And now the port has come to a halt, and the security service has once again shown that nothing is impossible for them. A raid by Ukrainian drones struck 2 ships at once, both sailing under the flag of the Seychelles and transporting Russian oil around the world. Every year, this port brought up to $15 billion to Putin's war machine. So even a temporary shutdown of the port, even if it is only for a brief period of time, seriously undermines the Kremlin's hopes of keeping its own economy afloat, because clearly the security service will not stop here.
The replenishment of the exchange fund. The soldiers of the 10th Edelweiss Brigade managed to film almost the entire process of a Russian being taken prisoner. Such a contactless method is not uncommon at the front. However, this case is unique because every movement of our soldiers and the enemies as well was recorded. Throughout the report, you will see a QR code on your screens. The unit's fighters are raising funds for a pickup truck. They will be grateful to all of us for donations toward this need. And now a spectacular and instructive story for the Russians from TSN correspondent Nelia Kowalska.
A field somewhere along the line of contact. At first it looks like a pile of garbage. Then the garbage starts to move.
Well, and these, I don't even know what to call them properly. Worms basically started to move.
It turned out there were actually 2 occupiers there. Alexander Karpovich, he's 25 years old, and just a year ago he lived in Volhynohorsk and wrote software for drilling rigs. He has a family.
He has a very small child, just 7 months old, a loving wife, and also a dear mother.
He played football and did wrestling. Then he robbed a local official, and instead of serving time, he chose to sign a contract. He even came up with a motive.
To take revenge for his cousin's brother.
The interview with the Russian was recorded a few hours after this video, where he folded his hands in prayer.
He opened up alone and started showing like, oh, don't kill me. Yeah, like, please don't kill me. You know, with very expressive gestures and all. The pilots, as they say, kind of, you could definitely say, softened up a bit, basically.
Well, actually, we had already approached with the VOGs, which are the Voice of God announcements, and we were getting completely ready to drop them, yeah. We were fully prepared for their deployment, and then we saw those hands, and basically, for me, it always works on the level of exchange funds. That is, every prisoner I capture, for example, is a chance to bring one of our defenders back home.
This is the Ukrainian drone operator with the call sign Lana. It was she who came up with the idea to try to take the enemy prisoner.
We're corresponding with him. We dropped him some water with a message, and he writes messages back to us. This is, of course, pretty cool. I've never seen anything like this before.
That's how she and her comrade wrote messages on a bottle of water.
He says, you write it, and I say, I can't because I don't write in Russian. I never learned that language. I can't write it.
My hands were already like this. I was already showing my hands like this. I surrender because they brought a bottle and it said, surrender, follow the drone, you will be helped.
The Russians receive the message, but apparently start arguing among themselves. Very little is known about the second occupier. 19 years old, call sign Frog. He didn't want to surrender.
Frog reported to the battalion commander that I was going to surrender, and they were already prepared. I hid under a bush and it hit 10 meters away.
The first note didn't help. I'm writing a second one.
Our pilots attach the second note to a grenade. The occupiers understand this hint better. Karpovich eventually does go after the drone. Frog stays in the field. What happened to Frog now? He's in the next world. How was he killed?
By air-dropped munitions.
One chose a better path, and the other's ass started to smoke. When we do what we have to do, I also feel like I saved my infantry's lives, for example. But it's also a chance to bring one of ours back from captivity. And for me, that was really, really the main point.
Lana says she later watched the interview with the prisoner.
I didn't recognize him because on camera, well, quickly after someone has spent a certain amount of time in those conditions, and I thought he was about 50 years old. He was all filthy, and I thought he was already an older man, but here he is, a young guy, actually even older than me, and I was like...
He drank urine, made filters from clothes, and drank urine.
Karpovich is now preparing for the exchange, and even suspects what will happen afterward.
Well, I'll serve my time. How much do they give for that? They give from 10 to 15 years for treason. I'll serve my sentence and return to my daughter. My daughter will grow up. She'll understand.
He urges other fellow compatriots not to sign any contracts, and has important advice for those who already have done so.
Surrender, lay down your arms, and leave the territory of Ukraine.
Nelly Kowalska, Mikhailo Putyata, TSN 1+1, United News Marathon.